Okay, welcome. Uh, this is a little generic video about a sort of a difficult subject for all of us, plagiarism. Um, what I want to do is just walk through what plagiarism is. I'm assuming most of you know, but experience tells me that people seem to commit plagiarism fairly regularly, and therefore maybe you don't know what it is. And secondly, then referencing what the department guidance says about referencing and how you should reference and hence avoid plagiarism. Okay, so first off, what is plagiarism? Well, it's fraud, or it's academic fraud, it's dishonesty. It's basically copying or paraphrasing other people's work or ideas without acknowledging them. That is, you haven't referenced it, you haven't cited it. So effectively what you're doing is you're taking a lump of somebody else's work and saying, this is my own. It's worth noting that if you're found guilty of plagiarism, we have a staged response in this institution. The first level is you get 0 for the piece of work. For a second offence, you could get 0 for the module. And for a third offence, you could actually be dismissed from the university. So this is serious. So it's important that we all know what plagiarism is and that you're very clear about how to avoid plagiarism. Okay, the rest of this presentation is about, we're going to look at a piece of work, a real piece of work which was submitted. It's an extreme example, but that's okay for this. And I'm going to take you through what, from the academic side, the process is when you submit a piece of work. Then we'll look at the departmental guidance on referencing, how you avoid plagiarism by referencing, and most importantly, how you reference. Okay, so all work you submit within chemistry, you submit via IVLE, and it is checked for plagiarism using software called Turnitin. You may, on whatever module you are doing, be submitting individual work under your own name. Then it must be your own work. In some modules you work as a group and you submit work as the group with all of the group's names on it. Then again, it's taken as the work of those individuals. Be careful in some modules where you work in a group but you submit individual work. In these circumstances, you need to be very, very sure that it's individual work, that you haven't actually included other people's work in there and called it your own, because that may be more unwitting, but it's still plagiarism. So, your own work in your own words. Okay, this is a piece of work. It doesn't matter when it was submitted, it doesn't matter for what module it was submitted, it doesn't matter who it is. When work comes in, towards the end of the module usually, we then run all of those submitted files through Turnitin, and it chunks around a bit and then produces a report for every piece of work. And this is one such report. So the basic submitted work consists of a number of pages, and what Turnitin does is it highlights any parts of the work with a reference, and we'll look at that in a moment, that it thinks are plagiarized. So pretty much it's found this material somewhere else. Okay, so this is an extreme example. Let's just walk through this piece of work, and we can see on the first page, whatever reference 4 is, it thinks it's found the first paragraph or two, and then continuing on, it's found something else somewhere else, and we just keep walking through it, and you can see that there is quite a large amount of this piece of work which Turnitin thinks has come from somewhere else. Oh look, there's a piece it hasn't found somewhere else. And we continue, and again all the highlighted parts with the appropriate references it thinks it's found somewhere else. Now things like this clearly are unlikely to be plagiarism, but we don't use this system blindly. We look at the reports and make our own determinations. Okay, so we continue to the references. Note there's only 3 references, 1 on the previous page and 2 here. And then we come to the report that Turnitin gives us. Now, those colours and that highlighting that numbers, the key to them is here. So for instance, it found something from a student work submitted to the University of Malaya. It found something from Strathclyde University. That was actually one of the references. It found something from the internet. It's found various different things. First of all, I want you to see the types of places it looks. Apart from the web generally, papers, books, web pages, it looks at theses. It looks at reports. It looks at student assignments, even your own. Now this is important. If, for instance, you have done an assignment and submitted for Module N in the university, and then for another report or assignment, you use part of that assignment, it will come up in Turnitin as plagiarized because you are plagiarizing yourself. Now, clearly, if you want to use stuff like that, then you reference it, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If we look at this piece of work, a startling 76% has been found somewhere else, which means 24% is this student's own work, potentially. And let's have a look at the breakdown. In this case, I'm not really interested in that or that or that. This is borderline. I'd have a look. I'm not going to do it in this presentation, but this sort of stuff, the vast majority clearly has been cut and pasted from somewhere. So this is plagiarism. Okay, so that's what you mustn't do. That's called plagiarism. An extreme example, but that's best for this video. Let's now think about what you should do, what you can do, which is encapsulated in the Departmental Guide for Referencing. And you'll find this on most of your modules in the guidance section of IVLE in the work bin. I've put a number of options down. The first is actually following the guidance, stating in your own words and reference it, cite the references. That's all fine, that's option A. We'll look at an example in a moment. Less good is, again, in your own words and reference, but not according to departmental guidelines. Okay, this is not plagiarism. You might lose a couple of marks for not referencing in the way that we've asked you to reference. But that's option B, and I'll give you an example. Least preferred, you'll lose a lot of marks here. It's not actually plagiarism, but you will be penalised if you write out the extract you want from a paper or whatever, put double quotes around it, and then reference it. Yes, okay, it's, as I say, not plagiarism, but you'll lose a lot of the marks for that. It's really least preferred. Then we move into the not allowed area. If you're in geography or maybe one of the humanities, you may well write an article or a piece, an assignment, and not reference all the way through, but have a heading bibliography and put the references just under there, and you're not citing them in the text. So it's like a list of sources without in-text referencing. This is specifically not allowed in our regulations. If you're studying in chemistry, Here you study under our rules, and our rules do not allow bibliographies, they allow referencing. It doesn't matter if you're doing geography modules, and when you're studying in geography, maybe they will go for, they'll say bibliography is the way they want you to do it. Then if you're there, you do it their way. If you're here, you do it our way. And finally, we've already looked at this, plagiarism, where you're simply using other people's work and you're not crediting them with that work. I won't talk any more about that. That's obviously the fifth option, and that's obviously illegal. Okay, so let's look at the first example. This is, I'm not going to read it to you. This is just a paragraph or so out of a proposal, and it is compliant with the departmental guidance on referencing in terms of format and the actual referencing. So it starts, changes to sea surface, ocean, primary productivity, modify cloud formation. That's a statement. And the whole idea of referencing is to support that statement from the literature. And our guidance says that you should use subscripted references, and then those references appear in a list-headed references at the end of the work. So this means that the statement changes to ocean, primary productivity, modify cloud formation is backed up by Andrea et al. 1995, Ayres et al. 1997, and that's how we proceed. The next statement, generating climate feedbacks, references 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. This is the ACS type method of referencing, and that's the one that we recommend in the department, or we require in the department. Okay, let's go to the second best then, which is still referencing, but not according to the departmental guidance. The same basic paragraph, and again, ideas are being cited appropriately in terms of you've got the correct references, but it's not according to departmental guidance. It's not superscripted numbers. The references still appear, but not in the same form as we've asked you. So it's okay. It's not plagiarism. You might lose a couple of marks for referencing in this way rather than the ACS way. Okay, let's now move on to the third option, which is not illegal. You'll lose a lot of marks for this because we really don't want you to do it, but don't get it mixed up with plagiarism because it isn't. We've got the same paragraph again, but this time the first sentence, instead of being referenced at points, we've got a quote from actually Andrea's paper. It's referenced, there it is, but it's actually verbatim quoted, and that's something we would rather you didn't do. The whole idea of your growth as scientists is that you learn to, you process this work internally and you synthesize new work which is yours. And again, in the words of Woodhouse et al., in quotes, it's not plagiarism because it's being referenced, but we don't want you to do this. Okay, now we move from the into the much more illegal area. First of all, we look at bibliographies. Again, the paragraph is there. Notice there's no references cited there, and in the end, just a bibliography. So you're not tying the reference to the statement. This is what you might do in humanities. It's not what you do in chemistry. If you do this, you will be heavily penalised. We don't want bibliographies. Okay, we want list of references and we want them cited in the text. Plagiarism we've already talked about, so I'm not going to talk any more about it here. I'm going to sum up. Pretty sort of grim little lecture, I suppose. Plagiarism is not a crime in most jurisdictions. It's, although dishonest, And if you're quoting other people's work without citing it, it can lead to criminal proceedings if copyright's infringed. In some jurisdictions, and there have been cases actually here in Singapore and in the United States, where criminal action has been taken effectively just for plagiarism. So you need to be careful. As a scientist, however, pretty much you can ruin your career this way. If you are found guilty of plagiarism, which in science terms is fraud, that's probably it. You're not going to get employed anywhere. So please do not do it. Your growth as a scientist is really important. And if you do this, you're defrauding yourself, ultimately. And it's very difficult. Well, not difficult, it's actually quite easy to deal with in one sense, but it's very unpleasant to have to deal with this. So, okay, end of lecture, guys. I think providing I can turn this off now, I'll say thank you for listening and goodbye.